Welcome to Takeaway with Sam Oches, a podcast for leaders of growing restaurant companies looking to take their businesses to the next level. In nearly 2 decades covering restaurants, I've gained access to some of this industry's most influential decision makers, and I'm letting you in on the conversations. In today's episode, you'll hear from the founder of a Midwest restaurant group that has quietly become one of the most iconic restaurateurs in the country, and learn how his flagship brand is achieving average unit volumes of around $14 million. Cameron Mitchell is the founder and CEO of Cameron Mitchell Restaurants, a Columbus, Ohio-based group that has 68 restaurants across 20-plus concepts from coast to coast. When Cameron set out to be a restaurateur over 3 decades ago, he wrote down that he wanted to build a company with great people delivering genuine hospitality. And that continues to be the mantra that's driving the renowned hospitality in his group. His flagship brand is Ocean Prime, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year and expects to close the year with around $285 million in sales at 21 locations. Ocean Prime's $14 million average unit volume is one of the best among multi-unit concepts in the U.S., and Cameron says the company has a handful of locations that are doing over $20 million per year. So how do they do it? I sat down with Cameron here in Columbus at Mitchell's Ocean Club, the original Ocean Prime location, to learn more about his philosophy around hospitality and how that has a direct impact on sales. In this conversation, you will learn more about why you should hone your site selection process over time to nail your perfect location, how things start to go downhill when you accept status quo, and why if you take care of your team, they will take care of your guests who will take care of your company. If you learn anything from this episode, go follow Takeaway wherever you listen to podcasts and leave some feedback. It's the best way to get those lessons to a fellow restaurateur. Jumping now into my interview with restaurateur Cameron Mitchell. Also, don't forget to stick around after the interview as I will share my 5 takeaways from this discussion, actionable insights that you can take with you on the go. Sitting down with Cameron Mitchell, founder of Cameron Mitchell Restaurants here in Columbus, Ohio. Cameron, thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure, Sam. Glad to be with you.
We picked a balmy January day here in Ohio to get together. So, Cameron, I'm really excited to talk with you, especially about Ocean Prime and the success of this brand, but also your exciting plans for it, celebrating 20th anniversary this year. But Ocean Prime is only one piece of the Cameron Mitchell Restaurants puzzle. And you and I have spoken several times over the last couple of years. I'm sure my audience has heard your name, but if you're outside Columbus, certainly if you're in a market where there's not an Ocean Prime or another one of your concepts, they might not be as familiar with your group. Tell us about sort of the scope of what you have built.
Okay. Cameron Mitchell Restaurants, we have 68 restaurants currently across the country. We're in 15 states, plus District of Columbia, where we stretch to Beverly Hills, to New York City. And in between, we have 22 different brands, I believe. And Ocean Prime is our largest brand, but we have lots of restaurants where we just have 1 or 2 of that particular brand. And we're a multi-concept restaurant company. We have about 6,000, we call employees, associates in the company. And we started our first restaurant in 1993 with the Open Air Cameras of Worthington. Mm-hmm. A 100-seat American Bistro on the northwest side of Columbus, still there today. Yeah. And we've opened over the course of the past 33 years about 110 restaurants. We sold 22 to Ruth Chris in 2008, and we have closed about 18 or so, somewhere in the ballpark, over the course of the life of our history.
Sure. Yeah. You are a trained chef. You went to the Culinary Institute of America. How much was the culinary excellence at the key to everything you've done in this book? Because all of your concepts are full service. Uh-huh. And culinary excellence is really a highlight of every single one of them. Mm-hmm. That's obviously important to you. Tell me about that.
Well, we're definitely a chef-driven restaurant company. And when I was 18 years old, I had an epiphany one day. I was a line cook at a local restaurant here in town, and I was struggling right out of high school what I wanted to do with my life, and had an epiphany that day that I wanted to be in the restaurant business the rest of my life. I wrote out my goals and woke my mom up at 1 a.m. after I got off my shift, and so I know what I want to do with myself. And want to be in the restaurant business the rest of my life. I want to be president of a restaurant company, and I'm going to go to the Culinary Institute of America, etc. And so I went to the CIA, not to become a chef per se, but to learn about food. Mm-hmm. In fact, only president of a restaurant company, I better know about food. And so did that, and graduated from there. And I started there as a student January of 85. So I'm just now 41 years since I started, and I graduated in 86. So almost 40 years this year since I graduated. I had a love affair with that school. We helped set up the new Walk of Fame for the CIA alumni and our 60,000 to represent our 60,000 alumni across the world. So I've had a love affair with that school, but we wanted to be a chef-driven company, and it would be about not just great hospitality and great service, but great food to back it up. And I've always admired, and I think, Rich Melman, Let's Entertain You. Rich has been my idol for as long as I can remember. And, they're just a great food company, a great restaurant company. And so we've always tried to emulate that along the way. So that's what we've done.
Ocean Prime, 2006, celebrating 20th anniversary this year. Tell me about the advent of that brand, because fine dining seafood, that is... I imagine you identified that as some white space in the market. That's not a very saturated category, and it's hard to execute. So why was that a concept that was something you developed and you got excited about?
Well, we're sitting here at Easton, one of the more well-known developments across the country. We were one of the first tenants here. We opened in 1999, and we opened up Mitchell's Ocean Club. And it did okay. It was open for lunch and dinner. I remember back in those days, we did 4.4 million lunch and dinner. It just struggled. And it was a little Disney-esque, if you will. Okay. Nothing against Disney. It just was vibrant colors and cobalt blue and terrazzo tile floors and so forth. And it just wasn't a very warm space. Mm-hmm. And we just were struggling. We made just a few bucks, and that was it. It was really basically breaking even. And we've been here 7 years, and I approached our landlord about I wanted to get a terrace built out here to get. We're on the second floor here, so I want to get some stair access also down the first floor, and kind of create an entrance plus a terrace and really bring it a little closer to the street and so forth. And he said, well, that's, going to cost a lot of money. And he said, well, I'll do that if you redo the interior of the restaurant. And I said, okay. And I said, well, if I'm going to do that, why don't we just do a new lease and start over? And he said, fine. So we agreed to do that. And it was the best thing I ever did. We ended up closing for lunch in the process, and we remodeled the restaurant, reconcepted it. Still same name, Mitchell's Ocean Club, but it was much warmer, as you can see today. It's soft tones and warmer and so forth. And we redid the menu and really focused on, and then created the name Ocean Prime. We didn't change the name here, but it really eventually became Ocean Prime, which is prime. Is all the original concept: prime steaks, prime seafood. Yeah. So. The turnaround was miraculous. We went from 4.4 million dinner only to 6.6 million, or 4.4 million lunch and dinner, 6.6 million dinner only. And it really birthed the brand, Ocean Prime. And we opened up our next one 2 years later in 2008, our first Ocean Prime in Detroit, Michigan, Troy, Michigan. Subsequently, today we have 20 with our 21st opening here in a couple of weeks.
And you've selected really vibrant developments for this, because this is not a let's saturate a market with a lot of ocean primes kind of concept. This is go into the heart of the busiest, most vibrant cultural hub of a city. What does that mean about the core demographic that you're going after with this concept?
Well, we're trying to find places where you all three. We have great density just of local people that are a great business and so forth. Then we want to try to find tourism closer to convention centers or something, where there's a lot of traffic, hotels, that sort of thing. And then, thirdly, find, areas where there's a lot of our fellow restaurateurs in it. So there's this very active nightlife and so forth. The other thing that's great about Ocean Prime is we're not pressed to grow geographically. With the high volumes, the average unit volumes that it has, we can have, one in New York City, or, we don't have to put 3 or 4 in each market along the way. And so, in fact, we only have one market, and that is Denver, Colorado, where we have actually 2 Ocean Primes, or with one downtown and one in the South Business District in the southern suburbs. So, and so we're really looking for trophy locations, and we've honed the brand over the years. I could say, by way of example, the average unit volume for Ocean Prime is about $14 million. Okay,
Wow.
Which is a strong unit volume, etc. However, the last 11 we've opened, so over the past 10 years, have averaged 16 million average unit volume. We've learned a lot about the real estate piece, and site selection, location piece along the way. So that's our older restaurants that are now doing the same type of volumes as our newer restaurants are. And we've improved the brand, enhanced the brand along the way. And then finally, this year we'll have 5 of our restaurants will average over 20 million revenue, which is really incredible. Yeah. And pinch myself every time I say that. But we got some but trophy locations are hard to find. It's our VP of Development says you have to kiss a lot of frogs along the way. So it is true. And we just opened up Fort Lauderdale back in April, on the water, on the intercoastal, 2 stories, 2 outdoor terraces overlooking the water, and brand new marina. Incredible location. But we started on that location in 2019. Now, COVID slowed everything down a little bit, but then the REIT that was developed, and it stopped development for a while, but it was a long haul to get there. And but trophy locations don't come around. They're generational sites, So that's there. It reminds me of, we're in Boston. We opened up our Boston Ocean Prime in 2015. This is now 2014, and our team, we were really pressed for cash. We have done a lot of development, and in the South Seaport area of Boston was just boom, but it was, a lot of us under construction. So we went up for a final site visit with a couple of our teammates, and our CFO told our guys, whatever you do not let him sign that lease. We can't afford it. Right? So they're telling me this, and we can't afford it, and the site is too premature and everything else. And I said, guys, I appreciate that, but we can't afford not to do it. This is a site that will not come around for another 40 years. And so, and it's proven itself out many times over since that. So I was right on that. But I'm not always right, but I was right on it. And so, anyways, it's been a labor of love over the past 20 years, and we have some other great brands too. Don't get me wrong. It's not that. It's just that this is our horse. This is our our signature brand.
I mean, you must be in this envious position of developers must be banging down your doors, because if they know that you're doing that kind of business, then all of those trophy locations, when they come up, you're probably one of the few restaurant operators in America where they can call you and say, if we put Ocean Prime here, we can guarantee that business.
Yeah, it's getting better. I appreciate that. And there's some kernel of truth to that. But, we're still from Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, sure.
And you live here, but it reminds in the early days when we started work, going out of town and moving out of town, we would talk to developers and they'd say, "We're from Columbus, huh? No, thanks. We're not interested." Right. And so it took a lot of perseverance, if you will, or push and fortitude to get some of these locations along the way. And yes, I mean, today it's much better. I think we have, restaurants in Vegas, Chicago, across the country, but they're, New York City, etc. But, excuse me, I'm just getting over cold, but, it's still not, we still have developers say that still know about us or whatever. And it is a big country out there.
Yeah.
So, we'll see, but we continue to keep pushing and continue to get exposure. And one door always leads to another. I've always believed, and it's no different than the story of CMR. They have one little restaurant on the northwest side of town. Nobody even heard of Pyramid restaurants back then. So 33 years ago. So, it's like a snowball. Just hopefully gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But it still is. We're still Food Columbus, Ohio. And we started in New York, Manhattan, or we started in LA, or something, or Chicago. Maybe the story would have been a little different. But
Yeah.
So we had that a little bit. We had headway against us.
Yeah. So 14 million AUV. We were talking before we hit record. That's probably top 5 in the country.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about a few restaurants with 20 million plus. This is something people covet. Restaurant operators covet those kind of numbers.
Mm-hmm.
What is key to that? Obviously, you're great operators. It's a great concept, but I've seen great concepts max out at 8, 9, 10 million. You guys take it to a really high level. How are you able to pull that off?
Well, I'm not sure.
Well, if there was a secret, and if there's an answer here, everybody would be doing it.
Right, I guess. Yeah, right. I do say, great restaurateur is difficult. If it was easy, everybody would do it. Right. So it is difficult. And a couple things really kind of mind. One, we have a great operating culture. Our values and our pillars of our culture, and how our people come first, our associates come first, and how we define ourselves as great people delivering genuine hospitality. It starts with our culture and values. Okay, number one. Number two, then I was saying we had a leadership retreat in March of last year. You had 50 directors, 12 exec team members, and me. So 63 people in there, and we figured out we had a collective 1,200 years of experience with the company, not just the business, but with the company in that room. So the average tenure is 18 years in that room.
Wow.
So that continuity of team, we work very well together, the CMR family, all those things is key. When you think about like Las Vegas, for example, we measure everything we do, okay? We measure our culture, how it resonates with our people. We have associate opinion surveys we do twice a year, et cetera. But we measure everything we do. And one of the things we measure is our open table guest scores, right?
Okay.
So Vegas has been open 2.5 years. It's gotten lots of great accolades out in Vegas, best meat restaurant, best seafood, et cetera. But the key there is we've had 3,500 reviews on Open Table since we started. We have a 4.9 rating, which is, means, out of 500 reviews, we had, 10, 4 stars, and the rest 5. And so, that's just that day in, day out, shift in, shift out execution. And we continue on our brand. Part of our culture is we're better today, we're yesterday, and better tomorrow than we are today. That's our goal. Mm-hmm. And, and so we're continually trying to improve. In fact, we're getting ready to embark. We haven't touched the menu in a year or two, a couple of years now, and we want to just do some even more refinements to that. So we're continually pushing, when we talk to all of our people, all of our servers and everybody, they tell us what our guests are wanting and so forth. We keep trying to further refine. We don't really accept status quo.
Yeah.
So I always think once you do that, you start to go downhill. We're always pushing to go uphill and trying to find our way. So it's a lot of that culmination of a lot of things. But the average Ocean Prime open table score is 4.8. We a restaurant that we would consider we want to keep an eye on was doing 4.7. That we think we've got a problem with, and we've got a few in the system that are 4.9. But that is just really hard. So we shoot for an average of 4.8 open table rating. That means 96% of our guests are giving us a 4 or 5 star rating. So that's those are pretty good odds if we can do that.
Yeah, again, enviable for any restaurant operator out there. I want to dive into the culinary, but this is the part I want to give your team a cue because I know there's some food coming out.
Okay.
So we are free to do food. I'll just bring that into the ether because I want to get into culinary, especially because seafood is not, like I mentioned at the outset here, seafood is an interesting category when it comes to multi-unit concepts. Sort of famously, none succeed at a national level, at least none that are built around quality. It's a very regional category. You have, of course, great scenes in Boston and Seattle and Gulf Coast. And so I know Ocean Prime is not just seafood, but where it's called Ocean Prime, seafood is the lead. It's the star, here. How do you continue to evolve this concept and appeal to customers' tastes and attitudes towards seafood, where it's always been a little tricky to kind of take hold across the entire country?
Well, first of all, I think barbecue is much harder.
That's good, and more regional for sure. Yeah,
more regional and a lot harder. But one thing seafood has going for it is including myself. I mean, I go to the grocery store, I look at a great seafood section and so forth, but very rarely do I grab a piece of fish and bring it home cook it. Right. I mean, people are afraid of it. Yeah, they're afraid of seafood and so forth. And so it's something kind of that, it's our little fiefdom, that, people don't want to. Enough people cook steaks at home. There'll be a backyard on the grill, etc. A little bit easier to handle, a little bit easier to manage. But we back up our seafood with incredible brine steak selection and everything else. But it's not just seafood with Ocean Prime. I mean, we've got incredible sushi on the menu. We got some great salads. It's all that. It's a combination of everything. So, but starts with the product you buy. Good fish isn't cheap, and cheap fish isn't good, right? So it starts that product and the purveyors that we've nurtured over the years. We have a partnership now with their own oyster farms that are buying security just for us and so forth. Along the way, whether Alaskan King, we've been up to Dutch Harbor, for Alaskan King crab legs, so it is. We're constantly nurturing, those relationships, through the Boston Seafood Show, but along the way. So as we continue to grow the brand, and then it's the culinary teaching, that we have we call deep dives every year within our brands. So we our corporate chef, our regional chefs, our unit chefs, and get together and these concepts, and we remake every single menu item, that specifically the way it's supposed to be made. Pictures are up on the walls and so forth, and it's constant. Because when we have very, very low hourly turnover. It's still a phone game, telephone game, so you have to retrench a lot and making sure that, don't assume that everybody knows exactly the right way to do some certain things. It's constant teaching, constant evolution of the brand that we're doing. So it is, clearly there's some art to it, but it's also a lot of science and making sure that, that seafood is cared for and properly and purchased properly and butchered properly and all those things that go into before you see a saute pan or a grill or whatever. So
I was speaking with the leadership team over at Ivers recently in Seattle, and they get king salmon 2 days after it was caught because of the proximity to Alaska. And we were talking about the concept of seafood, scaling seafood, and the supply chain of seafood, and they were saying they can't move out of the Pacific Northwest because the supply chain is tricky to get that fresh Alaskan seafood to a Columbus or a Nashville or a Denver. What is key to making sure that the product is high quality when served in the middle of the country, not near these, ports?
Well, I would disagree with that to a certain extent. I mean, fresh fish, an hour room temperature is a day shelf life, etc. I mean, I get all that, but if I think back to my earlier days in the restaurant business, we used to buy from Steve Connolly up in Boston, and that seafood would be trucked in on ice, packed in plastic coolers, and so forth. And but I think shipping technology today is even better. Airline, air freight, you can get done. We can buy fresh seafood from Hawaii. Doesn't mean we can't. We're 4 hours by air further than LA. but we're not in Hawaii, but does that mean we still don't want to sell Hawaiian fresh seafood? No, I mean, it's a matter of, in my opinion, of the shipping. Yeah. Is it not in your backyard? Yes. Okay. I'll grant you that. But, on the same token, it's a matter of hours difference in the quality of that, the time elapsed from that time that fish is out of that product is out of the water to the time it's in our kitchens on our guest plate. It's just proximity. It's just proximity.
Yeah.
It's not. Sorry, that's my point.
Yeah, it's efficiency in the supply chain, and yeah, there's ways to do it.
Yeah, if you're buying enough, you've got. I mean, think about we have seafood purveyors around the country that we've used and we have relationships with. We don't. We inspect them personally, ourselves, our purchasing teams, and so forth, making sure they're up to our standards, etc. And we stick with them too. They know, but we're gonna bid every one each week, right, and so forth. And so our purveyors want to take care of us, but those purveyors are buying a hell of a lot more fish than we are,
right?
And so it is. We want to be called top of the catch, if you will, but on the same token. It's you could have that greatest piece of fish out of the water it's next to your restaurant, but if you're overcooking that or not seasoning it properly or the preparation isn't that great, then it's all moot.
Sure.
So
right. Thinking of innovation within seafood, I imagine just like a steakhouse, people want a prime rib. They want a ribeye. They want a T-bone. They don't. The steak is not necessarily changing as a product over time. Is it the same with seafood? I mean, how much do you have to push the envelope with menu innovation at Ocean Prime?
Well, I guess there's a couple ways to answer that, but let's just take a piece of red snapper, right?
Sure.
Is red snapper itself that fish changed from 20 years ago? Probably not.
Right.
But there's the evolution of hog snapper and some other varieties of snapper that we're getting in and so forth. If you think about steaks, I don't know how many years ago, 5 years ago, you never saw a Wagyu steak on a menu, or, and now the Wagyu is, and other steaks, are just exploding, so in varietals and so forth. So it's, aquaculture has been a big thing, oysters and oyster farming has come to a whole different level now and so forth. So, the product itself, maybe, base product may not be changing, but it's, how it's treated and so forth, and different varieties within that or varietals, are changing a little bit. So,
got it. The next 5 years, you guys are planning to grow aggressively as it relates to, in perspective, 10 locations over the next 5 years. Is that right?
Yeah, we've averaged basically one a year the past 10 years. And so we feel now like, look, we've been lucky and blessed to have some pretty good numbers and some, and so we're still building our other brands too. Don't get me wrong. We're still identifying, call them, brands that might be in the barn, that are ready to come out and so forth. But, and I don't see 150 Ocean Primes or 200. But if you look at, a more mature brand like Capital Grill, by way of example, like Capital Grill, last I checked, had about 75, 76 locations. And, I don't know exactly the age of Capital Grill, but I think it's in the neighborhood of, 35, 40, 40 or 35-year-old brand.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean sometimes age is better. Sometimes you think of brands, it's more a brand. It's, Ocean Prime today is better than it was, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because we're constantly innovating and constantly pushing the envelope with it and trying and constantly thinking outside the box. So, and trying to make it better, right? So it's kind of a misnomer sometimes out there. The older brand, the more mature brand is that, it's not so good. Right. That, to me, that always gets after leadership. It's not, it's not the brand itself. It's the leadership that's running that brand and so forth. So, when I think of, about Ocean Prime now, can I have 70 locations maybe across the country? Probably, same with Campbell Brook, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm sure it's got some incredible locations. I have a friend that's Bluegrass Hospitality in Lexington. He's got in Lexington, Louisville, restaurants doing 13, 14, $17 million. So it's not that we're only in big markets. We want to be in Raleigh, by example, but we want to get trophy locations in those markets. And so that's hard to find, but we think we could, it's time to maybe step up to try to get 2 a year and under our belts along the way. And if it's only one, then it's only one. Sure. If it's none, none. If we had 3 open in 15 months. So, right. It depends on timing sometimes and so forth. But our past record, we've been, we have 20, soon have 21 Ocean Prime. So, basically 1 year for a long time. Yeah. And we think we're ready. And running 2 on 20 is, a 10% growth rate. We're, growing 1 on 2 is 100% growth.
Right.
Or 2 on 1 on 4. So, yes, we're stepping on the gas a little bit, but don't feel like it is. We're really hitting the toe with it.
Right.
It's just we want to build 4 or 5 restaurants a year, and we think Ocean Prime should be 1 or 2 of those for sure. Sure.
So 2 Ocean Primes a year is probably the equivalent of like a QSR saying we're going to open 20 a year. This is a big operation.
Yeah.
So you can't just snap your fingers and make those happen. To your point.
Well, and that's the other thing. It's really nice about the brand. When you think about a restaurant business itself, Ocean Prime will be a $280 million brand this year. Mm-hmm. And
thank you. Look at this. Okay. Lovely. Thank you.
With this, 20 restaurants, right? So compare that to a restaurant company that has 4 million average weekly their brand, and the same 280 be 70 restaurants. It takes a lot more people power to run 70 restaurants at the 20. So it creates a lower corporate overhead along the way, which is pretty nice too. So that's an added benefit. Not only the higher volumes with the check average and so forth, it's also on the back end less arduous and less people need to actually run the business.
Right. Yeah. All right. What are we looking at right now? This is an incredible spread. We need to highlight here.
I think we must have some neighbors coming because there's a lot of food here.
I'm okay with it. I'm hungry. It's lunchtime.
Yeah. So here's a perfect kind of example of the evolution of the brand here. So, when we opened up the very first Ocean Club here in 2006, that dish right there, that goat cheese ravioli, has been here since day one. Happens to be my wife's favorite dish in the company too. It's just a fabulous dish and has really nothing to do with seafood. Yeah. It's a goat cheese ravioli, right? So, but then 10 years in, here's some of our issues I was talking about. Here's 10 years in, we started sushi. And so, and I'll never forget our guys saying, well, we can't do sushi. It's just too hard, too labor intensive, too much art to it. We're not that type of folks.
Yeah.
And when someone tells me I can't do something, that's like my wife telling me, she wants me to do something, tell me I can't do it, right? And so they're like, my hair goes up on the back of my head. I say, guys, listen, if we try it, work hard at it, and it doesn't, we can't get it to work, then we try it.
Sure.
But don't tell me we can't do something until we try these. And so today, probably one of the most monumental things we did, sushi today is pretty prevalent everywhere. It's not like, we were one of the first back then, and outside of, Asian sushi restaurants, sushi bars, to do sushi. And so, and the program, like everything else, evolved over time. But you have a more of a regional dish here, which is the snapper I was talking about earlier, but it's got, and this might change, might get a little dated, but it's one of my favorites. I just ordered it the other day. It's got a cornbread stuffing underneath and the black meat spice on it and so forth, and a little bit New Orleans, if you will-ish, and Creole butter sauce. Great dish. But we'll see. It's constantly evolving. This, I hope they gave us the Piedmontese filet, which is a Italian beef, but it is incredible filet, and we've got some other, there's Wagyu out there and so forth. But, and then it's, obviously the seafood tower is probably one of our signature items, that certainly big celebrations here at Ocean.
With a show, all right?
Yeah, we'll smoke show to it. Here's an interesting thing here is the bread basket, and we've taken a little bit of heat for this, but this is a, really nice bread basket. You got pretzel bread, the brioche here, and the flatbreads over here. We upgraded our bread basket, but we also started charging for bread. Yeah. And it's difficult. The restaurant business is difficult. And profitability is challenged in so many different ways now, even more so than ever. I never thought coming out of COVID it would be as difficult as it has been, but it has been. So, we charge $8 for a bread basket. I think it's very reasonable. It's a beautiful bread basket, if you will, and so forth. Fresh baked, everything, and so forth. But huge help to the bottom line by not sort of paying for bread. You need nothing back for it, and really, not every table wants bread,
right?
But we're going to them anyways, so we're wasting all the bread. And then so now people who want the bread, or before we upgraded it a little bit, and so a little bit of a little singe in the beginning with some of our guests and the feedback, but you see more and more the higher end restaurants across the country doing that. And, by way of example, we sell, it's not the right word, $3 million worth of desserts. We get everybody a complimentary dessert that comes in our restaurant for an anniversary or birthday. Mm-hmm. That's a sacred cow. That's not going anywhere. We're not cheating or a little mini dessert or, anything like that. We know we get taken advantage of sometimes for it, but our desserts are all made from scratch in house. Are phenomenal, are huge, and so forth. But the bread, we felt we needed to make a change on it and to really get our profitability, and helps us not raise our prices as much as we want to. But and so those who want bread can pay a little bit for it, and those who don't want going to pay for it.
And that dessert basket for like 4 people,
right?
So that you're taking some home with that one.
But you're paying for bread whether you like it or not. Yeah. So it's actually better for those guests that don't want to, right? Because we're keeping our prices down a little bit lower. So anyways, and then help. Rotten potatoes have been on since day one too. Those are never changing. Those are my favorite. I've tried many potato dishes across the country in my travels. Rotten dishes like that, and it's still my favorite. So that won't be changed. But
sure.
So got to continue to evolve the brand, but you also got to know when not to change. We're not changing for change's sake.
Yeah.
So.
Well, after I hit stop, I'm going to devour this. So we'll spare our audience and not have to watch me dive into this. I want to talk about hospitality. I mean, you talk about your philosophy, your values. I know hospitality is. You've literally written the book on this. Yes is the answer. What's the question? And you mentioned, something like the free dessert for a birthday or anniversary. That's not going away. That is a part of hospitality. At Ocean Prime, you're about to roll out a loyalty program. There's an element of hospitality to that. It seems to me in this day and age, hospitality is clearly favored by customers. What the direction we went in with COVID toward convenience and accessibility and speed, we're coming back. We want the experience. I wonder if you could talk about that for a bit, because it seems to me that must be part of the fuel to the fire under Ocean Prime. Right?
So that, and even thinking about alcohol, it's everything's a flight to quality right now. So the better you can execute, the higher the value, the options that people can see and try and experience and so forth, is where they're gravitating to. And I think Ocean Prime will continue to deliver that promise to our guests along that. Hospitality is where we define ourselves as great people delivering genuine hospitality. Just, I wrote that out in my apartment, my 1-bedroom apartment, before I ever had one restaurant, and before I ever looked for a site, etc. But that's how we define ourselves. And by definition, think about it for a second, as great people. We all know great people in our lives, right? Delivery means someone's receiving, you can have great hospitality, but if no one's receiving it, how good is it, right?
Right.
So delivering genuine means from the heart, right? Genuine person, right? From the heart. And hospitality is treating guests like we treat guests in our own home. So we're great people delivering genuine hospitality. But you dissect those words by the nature of those words, you can see the picture start to evolve. What that means. I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. What's that got to do with great people delivering genuine hospitality, right? What's that got to do with being an extraordinary restaurant company? If they don't have to do with any of that sort of thing, then we're not really interested in doing some of that stuff. All right. So we keep those values near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah.
Take care of our people. More than anything, I always look at it as a triangular relationship, right? In our company, the associate comes first, not the guest. Now, not that I don't care about great hospitality. Obviously, I do. It runs the deepest depths of my heart. But we actually have the relationship with our people. We see them every day, or almost every day, etc. And so we look at it as a triangular relationship. We take care of our people take care of our guests, and then our guests take care of our company by repeat business. So it's and that's worked very well for us for the past 32 years.
Sure. Well, it's fascinating because, if we took a step back and we look at the state of things in 2026, the economy is not getting much better this year. I think it's safe to say, hopefully we've bottomed out. We should have bright horizons in 2026.
I didn't think so. I thought we bottomed out last year, but
every year for the past 5 years, I would say. And so, the industry's kind of, hunkering down. There's a lot of different factors here at play to why this is not going to be a great year, but one of them is certainly labor. I was just looking at some data recently that showed how many young people are choosing not to work. Once upon a time, more than half of teenagers would go find a job. Now it's down to like about a third of teenagers go find a job. So the labor pool is not getting deeper for the restaurant industry. There's oversaturation among the restaurant in the restaurant industry. You're going to see a lot of closures probably. But I'm just curious about all of this as it relates to labor and talent for you. Because you mentioned that the average tenure among your leadership team is 19 years. You talk about putting your associates first, but even before the guest. I imagine that is it's one of the tricks up your sleeve for the success of your group and time, the whole group, which is you have to take care of your people. You're probably attracting top talent. Tell me how that plays into all of this.
Well, glad you asked the question, because we just came off of our annual executive team leadership retreat where we lock ourselves in a room for 3 days. Everybody presents their business plans, etc. And then we go have fun together for another 2 days. So it's a week we get together as our team. And now, a couple things of note. One, wage inflation has basically subsided. Back more to normal levels at 4.5%, mark. Number one. Number two, and we already see that. Number two, our turnover hit the lowest mark it's ever hit in company history in 25. We had sub 10% management turnover. We finished up at 9.2% management turnover on 500 managers. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And number one. Number two, on the hourly turnover, we've always hovered around 40%. It might be 41, 42 on a bad year. 38 on a good year, maybe somewhere in that ballpark. And again, now 5,400 hourly associates, and that turnover now dropped below 30% for the first time ever, like high 29s. And it's really remarkable, So what does that do for you, right? So obviously labor, training, dollars, more experienced team on the floor, and on the line, etc. Some better consistency of product along the way, and so, and they know. That they're well taken care of here at Mitchell Restaurants. I walked into one of our restaurants last night. It was 6 degrees out, and I pull in the Valley Park. I'm just running in to meet someone real quick to say hello, stop, and then head back out to the car. And I run in, and there are Valley Parkers there that we have, propane mushroom heaters for the Valley Parkers. We're out of the propane.
Okay.
Like, oh my God. are you guys staying inside here, work from here inside, don't let me wait for a car, but just keep a sharp eye out. And and if one of you guys want to get the propane, I went right in the door, talked to the manager, we got to get these propane heaters on. So it's just, again, it's just a little thing, but the CEO comes in, a care and concern for Valley Partners, right? So it is, we're closed the major holidays. And shame on me, I just found out 3 or 4 years ago, our Latino population that's in our workforce, we're closed both Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And Christmas Eve is the most important day to the Latino population. I never even knew that until a couple years ago. We've been closed since day one on those days. So, but, I don't want to work those days.
Right.
And we just follow the golden rule. All of us, we treat people the way we want to be treated. And so, my assistant last night was off sick yesterday. Remember how you feeling? I texted her last night. I'm leaving for a trip on Wednesday. I go, how you feeling? She said, I'm getting better. But I'm still in bed. I said, listen, if you can't make it in tomorrow, no problem. I'll just see you next Monday, But I had stuff on my agenda this morning. I go, I'm not going to be in the office really till 1. So if you want to work 1 to 5 today, I'll have no problem too. So either way, but just letting you know, you don't have to feel any pressure to get in at night, It's like, thanks so much. I appreciate that. But it's that kind of care and concern that we have for everybody in our company. I can go on and talk for hours about it. We have emergency funds for associates in need and all this. You name it. If we can do it for our people, we do it for our people. Shut it. So that's the thing. And it pays huge dividends, on the backside.
Sure. All right. Last question. I want to be mindful of your time. Just thinking about the year ahead again.
We could talk for hours.
We could absolutely. Well, this food is not going to eat itself.
Yeah.
Thinking about the year ahead, there is a lot of pessimism. There's a lot of like I said, there's probably going to be a lot of closures this year. The industry is struggling, but kind of all in it together. Tell me one reason to be excited. I mean, you've seen over the course of 30 or 40 years in business, you've seen the economy ride the wave. We all know that this thing goes up and down, right? So I'm sure that you can look around the corner.
And segments come in and out of favor too,
Totally. So as you look around the corner, what gets you excited? What are you looking at that you think the industry could be optimistic about?
Well, I think one of the things we can be most optimistic about, in my opinion, is I've thought about this forever. I don't think we're not Yellow Cat. I don't think Uber is going to come along. Someone's going to come along and, AI or wherever is going to eviscerate this. People want to go out. They want to be entertained. They want to be stimulated. They want to try new food and drink and be taken care of as guests and so forth. So I don't see those threats to our industry, like everything, some other industries sort of face, right?
Yeah.
Number two, I think we need to celebrate that and think about that. Keep that in mind. Yes, we have some restaurant closures, right? Goes back to what I was saying, big restaurants are difficult. It was easy, everybody would do it. However, it seems to me almost that every restaurant that closes, there's no one opens. So it's not like they we're one of those people. We're looking for second gen spaces to a certain extent. So it's more churn than anything, in my opinion. I'm not sure the actual count. You would know better than me. Which restaurant count is down. People were talking about the demise of fine dining. Right? I mean, like tablecloth is dead. It's now some of our Ocean Prime don't have all like tablecloths anymore. But the fact of the matter is, fine dining, in my opinion, is very much alive. And in fact, actually, I think we're probably on the upswing, with fine dining. So I'm pretty optimistic about that. The only, the challenges to the P&L are tight, and have changed. I used to say, if you spent, $100 on a restaurant, you would want us to do $200 in sales, and that 2-to-1 sales to investment ratio would garner a 25 to 30% cash on cash return. Well, that model's out the window now. So it's now, when we put those in real dollars, if we spend $5 million on a restaurant, we want to do 10, right? Today, that $5 million we spend on a restaurant is now $7.5 million, but the its volume maybe up to 11 and a quarter. So now it's more 1.5 to 1 sales to investment ratio. So it has to change our way of thinking of how we do things. We've done some joint ventures with landlords now. We're doing some second generation sites, trying to find those to save a few bucks and so forth to try to keep that model alive. But there's, it is, it's always been difficult. Some years better than others, right? And sometimes, back when fast casual came on, right? I mean, it was like a herd of wildebeest, going to migration, that went to fast casual, right? I didn't want to do that. I remember seeing in front of Mufso, speaking of Mufso in 2009, saying, I'm the only guy in the United States, restaurateur in the United States, building fine dining restaurants, I think, so sometimes I saw the area, sometimes, I turn into the wind, as teeth of a storm, because I know I can get to the back end of the storm faster, better. And so there's, you got to be nimble, you got to be flexible, but better damn well stick to your values and stick to your core, even when the going gets tough. We'd never cut quality. That's just never going to happen. We tried buy smarter and that sort of thing, but we would never cut quality. And so I'm optimistic that I think, you look at, offices, are starting to come back a little bit. The one thing that's been challenging to us since COVID was that we never spent a dime on security pre-COVID. And we find now we're spending, we're spending $1 million a year on security in our restaurants. We just, now we're probably at 600. It's ebbed a little bit, but still, you see it on the airlines. You see the decorum out there with guests, whether, like I said, passengers on a plane or guests in a restaurant or hotel guests at a hotel. It's not like it used to be. So we have to be, that's a threat that's out there, because, we got to be careful and mindful of that. We got to enforce the dress code. We got to enforce it. You can't come in and smell like hot dogs, marijuana in your bar forever. So and that's hard to do sometimes. But if we don't, then we're going to alienate the guests that were coming in for the great experience along the ride. So it's so you got to stick to your knitting was my message. But I think overall, I think I'm no economist, but I do think we've kind of bottomed out a little bit. I am worried about, the stuff you can't control necessarily, Greenland, or stuff like that, that's come along. But we just keep doing what we do, and hopefully the chips fall our way along the way.
Yeah, wise words. Cameron Mitchell, appreciate your time. Thanks.
You got it right.
That was my interview with restaurateur Cameron Mitchell. So what should you learn from this interview? Here are my 5 takeaways. My first takeaway is that sometimes when a restaurant isn't working, you just need to start over. Cameron and I, of course, met in Mitchell's Ocean Club, which is the first Ocean Prime location, just with a different name, here in Columbus at the Easton Development. And that restaurant opened 20 years ago. But originally when the restaurant opened, as Cameron said, the vibe wasn't really right. It felt a little bit like he said, a little bit like Disney World, which is no offense to Disney World, but you kind of know what he's getting at here, which is, it's probably a little kitschy. It was a little bit maybe fake. And it wasn't the vibe that he wanted. He worked with the landlord to reconcept, redevelop. They added a terrace and an access stairway to better improve access to the restaurant. And he said it went from a lunch and dinner restaurant doing over $4 million per year to a dinner-only restaurant doing over $6 million per year. All with some changes, all with the, fact is starting over. Now, that's not the easiest thing for everybody to do. Certainly closing a restaurant's not easy. Starting over on a restaurant's not easy, and it is certainly expensive. But if you have the opportunity, don't miss it, because if a restaurant's not really what you think it could be or should be, if it's not really working like you want it to, don't drag it on into the future hoping it will change, because the chances are it won't. If you have the ability to stop and maybe not even start over, but retool the thing, try something different, you never know what you'll get. In this case, they got Ocean Prime. They retooled the brand. They got something much, much better. And out of it was born this incredible concept that now has almost 21 locations, doing over $14 million per restaurant. Maybe not going to be the case for you if you start over in your restaurant, but still, you do have an opportunity to get it right. You should take it if you have that opportunity. My second takeaway is that you should hone your site selection process over time to nail your perfect location. Cameron was explaining that over time, they've really come to understand what the right Ocean Prime location should be. They wait for trophy locations. As he says, in most cities, you have these developments where there's a location that is just perfect. It's around nightclubs and other restaurants. It's maybe a little bit more urban or around a development where there's a lot of foot traffic, maybe a lot of tourism. Cameron Mitchell, of course, has kind of earned the right to have first dibs at those locations. That's not true for everybody. But the point is that over 20 years, they've really refined their process of finding that right site. And he said some of the older Ocean Prime locations are not doing as well in their sales as the newer locations are doing, because over time they really came to understand what that right location might look like. Of course, you have to be patient. That's another thing here that Cameron Mitchell is working with that maybe you don't have the luxury of. But if you can be patient and wait for that right site to come available, you'll thank yourself later when it's doing better sales than the less good site is doing that you might have just settled for. My third takeaway is that when you accept status quo, things start to go downhill. Cameron says they are always pushing uphill. They're always trying to be better. They're constantly looking at their open table ratings. And he says, 4.7 isn't cutting it. They want 4.8 and 4.9. They want to always be as best as they can be. Cameron says that the servers know to learn from guests what guests want out of the restaurants. And then the servers pass that on to the management team so that they know, how can we be better? How can we improve this experience? That's a good lesson for everybody, because especially if you're in growth mode, especially if you're really trying to step on the accelerator and open new locations, it's easy to settle for status quo within the operations, to say, okay, we've got our model. That's what it's going to be from now on. We're just going to stick to this. If you don't challenge yourself, push yourself to try to improve every single day, things start to get stale and boring, and the customers might lose interest. So think about ways to push forward and not settle for status quo. My fourth takeaway is that if you take care of your team, they will take care of your guests, and they will take care of your company. This is such a great lesson I've heard from multiple leaders over the years, but I think Cameron really says it best here about, as he says, it's kind of that triangular relationship between, the company, the employees, and the guests. And he says, at Cameron Mitchell Restaurants, they take care of their associates, their employees, first. If they can invest in them, make them happy, then those people are going to make the guests happy. And that is ultimately what they want. They want guests to feel special, like they're having a great experience and great hospitality, so they will come back. Clearly, it is working. Some of the numbers that Cameron shared around their turnover really kind of blew my mind. Their management is in single digits for turnover. 9% of their management turns over. Their hourly staff turnover is somewhere around 40%. These are incredible numbers for this industry. And the average tenure for management was like 19 years. This is unheard of. But the point is that people, the employees at Cameron Mitchell Restaurants, are taken care of. They're clearly happy to be there. They want to stick around. And clearly that is trickling down to the restaurants and their success, because that leads to great hospitality, which leads to great sales. My fifth and final takeaway is that the P&L may have changed, but the demand for fine dining experiences has not. I was so curious to talk to Cameron specifically about what he sees with the state of the restaurant industry and what's around the corner. He's been doing this for over 30 years. He's one of the smartest people in this industry. And, as I feel a lot of pessimism from the industry, certainly a lot of challenges out there, I start to wonder, what's going on? What are we in for in the next couple of years? But Cameron is really optimistic. As he said, the P&L has changed. Costs have changed. That is a reality. He said, whereas they might once have had 2-to-1 cash on cash ratios, now it's more like 1.5-to-1 ratios. And, they make it work. But even if that P&L changes, this demand from consumers for a high quality, fine dining experience led with hospitality, that doesn't go away. In fact, maybe that's more in demand now than it has been in a long time, as consumers are stressed and they want that special restaurant experience. Those are all my takeaways for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe to Takeaway wherever you listen to feedback, wherever you listen to podcasts, and leave your feedback. You can also email me at sam.oches@informa.com. Thanks again, and talk to you next week.